You're watching Analysts After Dark, an underground hideaway where insatiably curious analysts examine provocative project problems, share salacious secrets, and establish a covert network of co-conspirators. Step into the dark with your hosts, AJ Hawley and Steve Jones.
Well, hello there, Steve. How are you?
Hey, Jay. I always enjoy that intro music. I just jam a little bit to it.
Yeah, kind of sets the tone.
It improves my mood.
Back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
You were gone last time.
I was. Vacation. Finally took one.
Very nice. A lot happened while you were gone. I'm not sure if you happened to catch it, but you're really going to have to step it up a lot now because Amy has set the bar here, and like she ate liver treats on air for no apparent reason. She sang a body song that she made up. Like it's gonna have to be.
Yeah, she really raised the bar. I did catch the freeze-dried liver treats that she ate instead of Teddy.
When I saw that, I was like, no, that's gross. Like I don't like liver prepared for a human, you know. That's one of the one things I will not eat. But she's just like, oh yeah, freeze dried and probably edible.
Probably, yeah. I've tried dog treats when I was little, but I have 2 older brothers,
so not as I wonder what this delicacy tastes like. It was you're going to eat this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
family. Good time.
You went on vacation with your brothers, or were you just with the immediate family?
Immediate family, visiting the in-laws.
So then no dog treats this past trip?
Not for me, no. Okay.
And do you normally do like beachy vacations, or what kind of vacations do you do?
We mix it up. We alternate between beachy and family, visiting out in Pittsburgh.
Gotcha.
So I try to catch up with some of our friends Dan and Bruce while I'm out there.
Did it happen?
Didn't get to connect this time, but we were talking. It was close.
Yeah. I know you had caught up with them, I think the last time you went out there, and you guys had I think you texted me a picture when you were out having pizza or something.
Barbecue. We went to a barbecue place in North Lima, Ohio.
Oh, okay. They're known for their barbecue.
It was still Ohio, so
I was being facetious. Ohio is not known for the barbecue. Maybe Skyline Chili. That's probably the only. And Geta in Cincinnati. I don't think of other Ohio foods. I don't think there are any.
But a variety nonetheless. There's always something good. So,
well, fun. Well, glad you're back. We have an awesome show tonight. So we have an awesome guest, and her name is Jen Bleen. I used to work with Jen way back when I was just a baby BA, and I was in development, not like development career wise, but like I was a developer, and then I switched over to business analysis, and I was working with her and a few other folks on a consulting team, and it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot on that project. Both, I think what to do, what not to do, and then also it was just a fun group of folks to kind of pal around with and learn from. So I still talk to half of those folks today on that same team. Yeah.
And you're still finding balance between doing some development work and business analysis as it is.
That's true. Yeah. I just actually posted that on LinkedIn today. Somebody was talking about low code and no code. And I went from development to being a business analyst because I didn't want to be a coder. And then now I'm a coder again, and I didn't want to be. I'm like, damn it.
You're an AJ of all trades.
Apparently. Yeah. So let's start talking to Jen. What do you think?
I love it.
Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jen. So Jen Bleen is a leader with many passions. She connects like-minded innovators, CEOs, and entrepreneurs through her coaching, mentoring, and mentoring practice. She plants seeds of inspiration and tends its growth in those she serves, mentors, and coaches. Jen regularly shares her knowledge as an expert panelist and speaker at industry conferences. She has 22 years of cross-functional technology experience working in digital transformation, cloud computing, marketing, infrastructure, call centers, enterprise services, finance, risk, support, and data analytics in multiple industries. She's used everything from Scrum, Kanban, ProSci, continuous improvement, Lean Six Sigma, product management, hybrid, and traditional methodologies to make it all happen. So,
Wow.
without further ado, let's welcome Jen.
Thank you.
You do it all.
Well, so glad you joined us. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you, AJ. Thank you, Steve. So I think I heard that last week somebody was eating freeze-dried liver. So I will not be. So set those expectations right now. No freeze-dried liver here.
Freeze-dried liver, dog treats. That's very, very important.
Yeah.
See, we all love the dogs, but I usually let the dog treats stay with the dogs.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Steve. I'm with you. I also heard you're going to be you were in Pittsburgh. I'll be traveling there next month to speak at a conference. So there's a Women in Technology conference there.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So where is it?
It is in Pittsburgh and at a Marriott. That's about all I know right now. It's if you Google WitCon Pittsburgh, you can find it.
Okay. Well, we will put that in the show notes for sure.
Absolutely.
So add WitCon Pittsburgh.
Yeah, there'll be a conference at the end of this month in Columbus I'll be at as well.
And what's that one?
That's the WitCon Columbus one.
Okay.
So I'll be speaking at both of their conferences that are coming up.
Pittsburgh better.
Pittsburgh's better. I don't know. I'm Columbus, so.
Think you're going to lose that argument, at least on this call, Steve?
We have the Buckeyes. Come on.
That's true.
Steelers, Panthers.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was up in Cleveland this weekend, and
sorry.
it was a big Bengals and Browns. So that it was chaos up there on Sunday. So I was get out of there before the craziness.
And apparently the Browns did well.
Yeah.
It wasn't another mistake by the lake.
That's what I was told.
That's impressive.
I had a friend who said, "Hey, how is Paramount Plus for football?" She texted me that earlier this week, and I said, "Well, I think I have Paramount Plus, but I don't watch it for football." I said, "Is Troy Aikman still like doing the throwy thing?" Just to see if she was the throwy thing, yeah. Just to see what she would say. She's like, "I had to Google who that was." I was like, "Okay, yeah, I forgot of that generation," and she's
yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That hurts.
Well, Jen, we start out every show asking our guests what their favorite after dark activity is. I had asked you that before the show, and you said, just sleep. You said, I need some sleep.
Yes. So, sleep is something that I took for granted most of my life. And now, being up there in the years, I have realized the value of it, especially when I've had insomnia for a few years. So I usually don't sleep more than about 2 or 3 hours at a time. And then I wake back up and then I go to sleep. So I'm up pretty early. I'm up pretty late. It's an ongoing thing. So unfortunately, at this point in life, I really treasure having some sleep.
Understandable. That actually makes a lot of sense because you had listed off all the things that you are doing, and I'm like, how does this woman sleep? It turns out that you don't.
You don't.
So I get it.
All right, that's
Yeah.
easy. You don't.
Yeah.
There's no time to sleep either.
It's life of an entrepreneur, and I'm also a single mom. I will say the mom duties are getting easier now that my last two are in high school. So it was more challenging back when I knew you the first time, AJ, when the kids were young and they used to show up at the office. And I don't know if you remember overnight releases. And here I came and set up beds underneath the desks. And you know.
Thank you, Costanza. We love seeing someone lead the way.
Yeah. That was right. So we were working at a banking institution, and we could only do releases over the weekend because you couldn't impact day-to-day operations. So all of the releases had to be done Friday night to Sunday morning, and then you were testing Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
So I was only an analyst at that stage, so I didn't have to be there for any of the actual true deployments. So it was, I did hear quite a bit about them. And, you know, I'm not sure if I should even share the story, but I'm going to anyway. Because why not? There was a time where someone had a whole bunch of, they always had food and candy and all sorts of different things there. And it was massive. So we had one person who was a voracious eater. He would eat whatever was out there. And they had a big 64-ounce bag of Skittles. Now, this person was also a big germaphobe. So he wouldn't touch anything that anybody else had touched. He would always use a napkin when he went up to select his thing from whatever of the food was up there in the shared area. So this one person had come out from, like I see this one person use the restroom and then just book it from, you know, the stall to the door and just walk right out. And then I come out to finish. I wash my hands, go to my desk, and then this person's there, and they're just elbow deep in those Skittles. You know, they're just grabbing hands and just putting them and then popping them in their mouth. Like, hey guys, how's it going? I'm sitting there just wide-eyed, going, "Oh my god, what?" And then I see my friend, he germaphobe guy. He comes in, he starts eating some Skittles, and I said, "Hey everybody. This person that just ate the Skittles, they didn't wash their hands." And then I see my friend immediately go, "Oh no!" Right? Absolutely hilarious, and I laughed so hard. So for the longest time, our scrum team name was the Brown Skittles, and it was
gross.
Yeah.
I was about to ask if this was autobiographical.
It was not me. It was not me.
Germaphobe.
Trust me, if it was me, I'll tell you. But I'll still text him when that comes up. I'll still text him every now and then, be like, "Hey, have you had any Skittles recently?" And he's just like, "No, shut up."
Yeah, sometimes it's kind of questionable when you're in environments like that.
That was my first experience with paired programming as well. So that
with
was
the same person, or
no, different person.
Okay, not the brown Skittle person. Sharing the keyboards too, or just
yes, so sharing keyboards, and there were times where people would eat at their desk all the time, and like one person would eat like just chicken fingers and fries, and so your fingers would just glide across their keyboard. Just and,
yeah,
try to hit a space bar and you're just sliding all over the place, like.
Yeah, so sometimes team norms come into play, and that gets addressed sometimes.
Yes,
that's a norm you definitely want to change.
Yeah, it wasn't me, Leslie. So thank you very much. Although I do have some germophobic tendencies.
I was gonna say, is your Twitter handle Travels with Blacklight?
No, but I do. That's a whole separate story. So,
be prepared.
You are self-described as a chaos organizer. What does that mean?
So throughout my career, I often get thrown into just chaos and madness. And part of it, I think, is I have that ability to look at the bigger strategy and then figure out how to execute on it. And growing up, I grew up in a lot of different locations. So I'm just kind of used to change. And so I can be pretty calm when there's a lot of chaos going on around, and start to say, okay, let's put some sense around this and calm everyone down. Let's put some order in place. It's been very useful and many times in my career.
And so when you mentioned just a second ago, that's why it's important to establish team norms. How do you
Mhm.
normally set up team norms in an environment like that?
Yes. So when there's a lot of chaos going on, it's get everybody together. And for me, I'm pretty direct. And so just start asking, hey, what's going on? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And start to call the elephant out in the room sometimes, because in those environments, nobody wants to talk about, what's going on, or they don't like to deliver the bad news. It's like, hey, we need to address it so we can move past it, because otherwise it's going to cause all kinds of blockers and derail us from other things. And sometimes when you have a lot of chaos going on, individuals need a little bit of sense of clarity and direction and sanity.
Okay.
And so I feel like those norms, and just even if it's, hey, how are we going to work together? We can't control everything else, but what can we control?
Yeah.
And that's usually something that's very easy for teams to rally around. Like, okay, well, we can control this thing right here, our little environment, how we're going to relate to each other. And then that starts to build some of that camaraderie, so that then when these other things that are going on around, they have a little bit of a sense of identity, who's our team. And I think it helps from that perspective.
So you reduce the noise, but focus on the communication to improve the team culture.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to understand the different individuals, how they like to communicate, how they interact with each other, what their preferred styles are. Hey, when are we going to be in the room together? Especially now when you have a lot of remote work, how do
Yeah.
we communicate with each other? And what are going to be our times that we're all going to be available? Are we going to gather together in a Zoom call or Teams call or something at a certain time of the day just to be there? Because back in the day when, we were working at the bank, or at the insurance company too, you had to come to the room and everybody sat in the room all day together. And you don't have that same sense in a lot of organizations where you have this hybrid, or a lot of people are remote. So how do you facilitate and communicate that? And I think it comes into play too when you're working with individuals that maybe are from different backgrounds.
Mhm.
I've been in situations where I completely thought somebody was disrespecting me because they wouldn't look me in the eyes. And, me being direct, I'm like, hey, what's going on? Why won't you look me in the eyes? Well, it was because they thought they were being respectful, because where they came from, you didn't look a woman in the eyes. And so, again, being able to give that person, well, you have the permission to look at me. I won't treat it
Mhm.
as disrespect. It's the norm here. And being able to talk about it if they're comfortable. But if they aren't comfortable and they don't want to look me in the eyes, I'm like, okay, I can work with that. But now I understand. So now there's not hard feelings, and now we can have that openness and communications, because I'm not carrying in the back of my head, oh my gosh, why is this person? They don't like me. They don't this, they don't that. They don't respect me. All the stories that can start to show up
Mhm.
if we aren't open and transparent, especially with our core team that we're going to be working with day to day. We need to understand each other and understand each other's quirks and how to communicate. And I think the norms help you bridge that conversation.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I had a similar experience while I was working at the bank as well, with someone, and they would offer me food every day or every time that they had it. And it was, hey, would you like this? Would you like that? Would you like this? And I would always say, oh no, thank you. I'm good. Oh no, thank you. And I was polite in my response. And then one time they just threw it on the desk and said, why won't you ever take any of the food that I offer you? I was like, whoa, what just
Yeah.
happened? and it was seen as a sign of disrespect on my end because I was declining that. It would have been more acceptable for me in their mind if I had accepted it and just never eaten it and left it on my desk than to say no thank you and then turn it away, which I thought was just mind-bogglingly weird. I was like, why would I just throw someone's food away? That would even be that would be rude to me. But
Yeah. A lot of differences. And when you're working as an analyst, you often are working with people from all different backgrounds, different levels in the organization, because even the mannerisms and behaviors within the organization, as you work with different groups, they have their own subcultures and the ways that they work. And so as an analyst, you're really having to kind of navigate that and observe and understand what's acceptable over here may not be acceptable in a different area.
Mhm.
Here we can be chatty catties or whatever. Here, no, it's get to the point, boom, boom, boom. And
Right.
being able to have that flexibility, I think, is important for an analyst to understand.
It's like working up
Cultural
in
awareness.
the Northeast, Right, Steve?
Absolutely.
Very, very direct up there.
We try, but at
Yeah.
the same time, there's similar approaches where there's not a lot of communication. It's just what the group norm is. And somebody new coming in sometimes has to have some intentionality
Mm.
to insert themselves just to understand what the team is like.
And then you get into, Steve, where some natural personalities may not feel comfortable asserting themselves. And then you get into different backgrounds where it's rude to insert yourself.
Yep.
And then from someone else's perspective, it's like, oh, well, they're not very good because they don't come and ask the questions or they don't insert themselves. And so you get all these mixed messages. And unfortunately, if we don't have the conversations and we don't really talk about those things, then people get laid off because they're like, oh, for some reason, it's not their own. They're actually really good at what they do. It's
Right.
just they weren't exhibiting the norm for that particular group and environment. And it's unfortunate. So again, going back to, I think it's important to have those conversations, and it helps to build trust amongst the team members, which I think is foundational to being able to move to a high performing team.
Absolutely. Trust is important.
Yeah.
You can't have good team norms without trust. So let's change gears a little bit and talk about strategy. So on the BA side, we often are seen as task rabbits, where we're just going in, grab the requirements, and then turn them into user stories or something that's a deliverable, and then just go back and do that again. But I feel like we have a larger opportunity for strategy. I know that you help organizations do that, and that's one of the businesses that you're a part of. You want to talk a little bit about that and say how BAs can be more strategic in what they deliver?
Yeah. So I think, as you said, that order taker, there's a sense of, oh, just have the BA go and take my order and type it in and write my story. And maybe if you're just starting out and you don't know enough about the industry or anything like that, then you'll end up in that type of a role and position. But like you said, AJ, I think there's so much more value that the BA brings to the table. One, they're typically what we like to say, the glue, right, between the business side of the house and the IT side of the house. Because oftentimes as that business analyst, you understand enough of the technical details, even if you're not the coder, but you do usually understand how things fit together. How does the data trace? How do the services trace? How do those help develop and create these core features that the business is using to then drive revenue and deliver value to their customers, right? And so taking a step back, I think it's often skipped. And a lot of times when I come in and I see there's a lot of chaos going on, it's, well, you're off just building things. Why? How does that tie back to the actual organization's values, the organization's business strategy? What is the value stream of the company? What's the value stream of your product? And by taking that step back and spending a little bit of time context setting, where you're looking at who are my critical stakeholders and do some stakeholder mapping. Where does my solution and the things that I'm building fit into the bigger picture? I've seen it over and over where if we aren't stepping back, what ends up happening at the larger organization level is you've got a team over here, a product team, and they're off building something and completely cannibalizing another part of your business. And so at the end of the day, it's like, oh, well, we built whatever. And it's like, yeah. And they're trying to get credit. And then they get upset when they realize, oh, well, when you get to the executive team, they're like, hey, we didn't meet our goals. You're not getting your bonus this year. And it's like, well, why not? We hit our goals. Well, yeah, but you guys didn't talk to each other. You didn't step back and look at the bigger picture, and you guys just cannibalized each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're actually in a worse situation organizationally. So I think as a BA, you really have that opportunity to ask why, right? 5 whys and get to your root cause, but also ask why and why are we doing this? Who is this for? Who's our customer? Why do they care that we're doing this? How does it deliver value to them? And really start understanding how things tie back to the bottom line. Because I feel like, and I found myself in my career at points when I was growing up as a BA, and it was, you're in there, you're doing your work, but you don't understand how it ties back to the bottom line. And
Right.
in order to grow your career, you got to be able to follow the money and understand the true value, not just to your customer value, but you got to understand the value to your organization as well. And I think that's where understanding and learning more about strategy really is helpful. And it can play in as you work with some of your, depending on if you have your own in-house customer validation processes where maybe you've got the space and you can bring in customers and validate your ideas with them, or you're buying outside marketing data and understanding what other competitors are doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more you can insert yourself and understand how the bigger picture fits together, I think that's where you're going to be able to be empowered as a BA. It gives you more room to add more deeper opinions that are validated and drive the bottom line. And I think that's how you get tied closer to strategy, which opens up a whole nother world. Because if you think about your career path, BA, maybe a project manager, and then maybe a program manager. You can kind of go up that path, right? Or you could go from a BA, cross out of maybe if you're systems analyst, business analyst, you can cross over and get into product owner or product manager and find your way that way as well, right? So you kind of have these different paths. Either way you go, you've got to expand beyond I'm the order taker in any of those scenarios.
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head on that there are career paths and you are the one that own your career path. It's not, if someone's trying to grow you, that's great. And they're trying to mentor you, and that's wonderful to have. But at the same time, you're the one that ultimately grows that yourself, and you can choose your own career path. And I feel like not enough people take that on and own that aspect of their careers, where they say, I've got this, I'm going to go into product ownership, and here's what I'm going to do in this case because I'm good at this, I know this, etc., and challenge themselves outside of that, the BA role.
They're not as intentional about what they want to do.
Yeah.
They
I
passively
think,
sit back and wait.
Yeah. And I think instead of being passive and sitting back and waiting, you really just have to try. And there's a lot of fear, especially if everybody's looking to you to write their requirements and get them perfect, right? There's this fear like, oh, I'm going to make a mistake. And we are going to make mistakes. We're human. We all will make mistakes. Own them and fix them, right? But I think going back to owning your career and stepping out of your comfort zone, I can give you an example when I was my first IT role, right? And I went to the town hall and the CEO was there, talking about the vision. This was like a large chemical company. And we're way back in the Y2K time where I was the analyst and looking at all of our vendors across the globe and making sure they were Y2K compliant and working on that. But I remember the CEO had put out a call, hey, if you've got any ideas, come see me. I was naive, my first role. Hey, send him an email. I have an idea. And I went and I sat down with the CEO. My idea was for crap, right? I don't know if I can cuss here, but it was for crap. And but the value I got out of that was just, he was a human, right? Just another person. And he actually started talking to me about why my idea was crap. He didn't call it crap, but I knew, because he talked about how it didn't fit into the company strategy and where they were going with the organization. And I was like, oh, so by being vulnerable, taking that risk and just kind of showing up, I was able to learn a lot about strategy and how the organization, how the executive who's leading the company was, taking with the direction he was going. And something else that he said to me, though, was I think at that point, he'd probably been the CEO for like 3 or 4 years. And he puts that offer out at every single town hall. And I was the first person to ever take him up on it.
Wow. I was going to ask that. So afterwards, did you have a really close relationship to that specific CEO, or at least did it give you other opportunities to be out in front of people that you wouldn't have normally had because of the pecking order?
For me, I didn't build a relationship with him. I was in my 20s and young and didn't really know what I was doing. But I would say it took away, I think, a lot of that fear. And so when you think about, and especially large organizations, and there is that pecking order, a lot of times individuals can get trapped in fear to go out and ask. Like, oh, I have a question. Well, then go ask, go get the answer. But there's a sense of fear about going and getting that answer, which can actually limit your career growth. And it limits whatever you're building because you're not going out and getting the information that you need. So you're now guessing. And so I think for me, it eliminated a lot of that fear, which, going back to chaos, right? When there's things that are going on, I'm like, who do I need to talk to? I don't care where they are in the organization. Who do I need to talk to fix this, to get the help that we need, to make sure that things can keep moving along? And you also, by understanding and trying and talking to other people, you start to build those relationships, which I do think, even though I never built a relationship with that CEO, it did allow me to build relationships with others that were like skip levels above, because I didn't have the fear to go ask them a question either.
Right.
And that's huge, because the biggest problem with the BA role is the question that you don't ask. That's the only stupid question, the one that you won't ask. And that becomes the biggest problem, because then there are assumptions and all other kinds of things that will impact the work that you're doing because you haven't verified. You've just trusted, but you didn't verify what it was.
Yeah.
And I think how many times too do we spend in front of not just the stakeholders, but actual directors and people that are in or VP level positions. So then how often do we have conversations with those folks? If you are afraid to ask those questions, you're not getting the value that you need out of those conversations, because they're going to give you those answers and give you direction, hopefully. But if you're scared to even confront, like talk to them in general, you're not going to be as productive in those meetings, just holistically.
Yeah.
So did you have an experience early on that was lots of chaos that just kind of scared you into being, I don't know, not stoic, but calm when stepping into that situation? Was there a catalyst for you?
Did you not hear earlier? She said she has 4 kids, Steve. She's a single mom. There you go.
I have 4 kids, yes. So there's that. But I would say even going back earlier, so I grew up in a household where my family, we moved all the time. So from kindergarten to 10th grade, I went to 21 different schools. So I was always put into this environment as the new person, right? And so I think that as much as there were probably things that weren't great for me in that experience, I would say from a career perspective, getting comfortable with, here we go again, it's another change, and being able to see, especially if as a kid going from state to state to state and, going in and out of schools, and in every city, every suburb, every rural area, right? They all had their own micro cultures. And what was acceptable at one school was not completely at a different school, right? And being moved in and out of those different areas allowed me, I think, to build some of that flexibility. So I got to actually exercise that muscle, which then allowed me to get comfortable with change. And I think at that point, it's like, oh, I've been here, I've seen this before. Which direction do I have to take it now? And you kind of learn to observe the individuals around so you could figure out how best to address that situation.
So instead of coming in guns blazing, you come in, observe, and ask, and then formulate the direction.
Yeah.
I have to say, this is a first on the show. We've never had someone that was a part of the witness protection program be on here. So it's great having you. Your face and your name are going to be on YouTube now. So if it wasn't already.
Great. I'm sure there probably is a file on me somewhere, I'm sure.
Your permanent record in all 21 schools.
That's always the weirdest thing when someone's like, this is going to go in your permanent record. Like, what permanent record? Who's taking notes? Where is that record? I want to see it.
What's your data retention policy?
Yeah.
What permanent record is there?
I think it's part of the conspiracy theory that there's a United States corporation that keeps a record on all of us or something. I don't know. There's lots of theories out there.
I'll leave that one alone. All right. So the last question I had for you was, we talked about strategy. We talked about vision. How do BAs become effective change agents? So that's one of the other items that you work on as well, and help organizations change their behavior patterns, et cetera. How do BAs influence that?
I think BAs are critical to that. If you think about when you're making a change, one of the tools that a BA uses is as is and to be's, right? Your as is process and your to be process. And when you're working through your as is and your to be's, you're identifying what are the things that we're changing. And you're doing stakeholder mapping, and you're understanding who the different stakeholders are, and you're creating personas to understand those individuals. And as part of that, there's also the learning journey that needs to happen. And then there's the communication of, okay, great, when we're going from here to here, how do we need to communicate that? Who needs to have that communication? And there's those different layers, right? Some communications are better said by the executive, who needs to be a little bit more directive, one way out. But then other times you're building those relationships so that when you're getting ready to make those changes, you've got people who really understand in that new group, because you now have that trusted relationship with them. And that's some of that informal communication that helps with the buy-in in the adoption. Because anything that we do, from any kind of projects that we're implementing within organizations, it's not just, hey, I'm going to build this and throw it over at you and then you're going to go use it. No, there's buy-in, there's adoption, because it's very easy to go back to the way it was always done, right? And so to create that sustainability, that's where the BAs have a role to play. Even if they're not the ones who are actually sending out the communications, because maybe you're working with a corporate communications organization or marketing, if you're working on something that's going out to external customers, so there's always those pieces. But I think it's important, understand who your stakeholders are and understand what they need to know about the changes. And then the other piece to change management is understanding And this is where having those relationships and going out and talking to others, who else is making changes to those same stakeholder groups? Because if I'm getting ready to introduce something to an internal customer or an external customer, I don't want to do it at the same time necessarily that 5 other groups are doing it, because then we'll overwhelm the individuals that are receiving that change. But by understanding when we're making changes and when others, maybe sometimes it does make sense to implement our changes at the same time as somebody else, maybe it doesn't. And so I think that's another piece that analysts can really, use their relationships and, reach out to your data people, reach out to your communication teams, your marketing teams, and get to know them and see what else is going on in the organization. So I think those are all ways that you can help with managing that change.
I like it. I think adding to that, just talking to your other fellow BAs, it's not often that we get the chance to get together, but even talking to them to say, hey, what are you working on? What are you doing? Because then if you, like you said, have the same stakeholder in mind and you're both going at that same person, perhaps you could talk and, well, I know that you need to have your change first before I can even have mine. So we'll let you go first, or at least influence that conversation and partner together.
And I would say when I was actively working as a BA, the architects were my best friends. I always reached out to the architects, especially the enterprise architects, because they had the big system changes. They understand what's coming down the pipeline. They're actually oftentimes setting the direction and strategy as to what are we going to retire, what are we going to keep. And by understanding that, there have been plenty of times where we had to stop a change that somebody else was going to implement because it was going to be detrimental to something we were doing. But had we not had those conversations, it would have just kept on going, and then our systems would have crashed.
Right.
So understanding and having those conversations, I think, is very important.
That would be a problem. We just put an enhancement in. Oh, system crashed. Great, thanks.
Yeah.
It's like that.
And trust me, you don't want to be, I've been there, where you take down your entire call center, right? And there's not enough employees to work the call center because it was down that bad. But things do happen.
That's chaos.
Yeah. Lots of war rooms, bringing in vendors from across the globe, like, hey, we got a problem, right? But it was a browser update. That was a forced browser update that nobody knew was coming. Nobody knew. So things do happen, and you have to just remain calm. Don't start putting fingers and blaming. Let's use our analytical skills to get to what is the root cause. How do we stopgap it? And then let's go fix the actual problem. And so, there's a lot of change management in there, and there's a lot of those analytical skills that are required to bring that together and create some sense of calm and direction when others may not be there.
And hopefully most companies have an environment where if you make a mistake that's not intentional, you're not let go because of it. Hopefully there's more companies that will come to the table and say, let's fix it, or put something in, stopgap, and then retrospect what happened.
Yeah. And
use that as a learning opportunity, because failure is only an end state if you stop trying at that point.
And when failure happens, okay, let's look at what caused it. Where did we have a gap? And that's where you get into the process improvements, and you can look at, there was a process that had changed 2 years earlier. And when it changed, we lost a certain data feed that we were getting because nobody wanted to pay for it anymore, where there was information being published, but the organization wasn't paying for it anymore because somebody had made a decision. It's like, we need to get that data back in, and we need to maybe put some other gaps in place, or maybe some audits or things like that as needed to make sure that we're not causing damage. So just use it as opportunities to improve, right? Continuous improvement. That's all we can do. And things change so fast.
Yeah.
Like technology changes so fast.
When you first mentioned that, I just imagined one of those those useless machines. I'm not sure if you've seen those where you press a little lever and like a cat pops out and like its paw hits it and then it turns the lever off and then you turn it on a different lever. Same thing happens. And so
Yep.
that's what I'm imagining the entire time is like, well, we built this one thing, but it undoes what we built over here. And then you just back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it is time to
And now it's time for BA Confessions.
so we actually have a confession.
We have a confession.
We do. We do. So our confession came from Canada, and that's all that they chose to tell us. And it said, it's so great to have a stakeholder who is so engaged that they send you a requirement they crafted themselves. Like this super helpful gem. The solution shall not restrict the ability to use the functionality as per the vendor's intention. I like it.
Intention. Love that in the requirement.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it should do what the vendor
I
says.
know exactly what to do with that, don't you? Come on.
Totally.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was the written requirement. That was the
That is-
documented.
That is the requirement. And then the result out of that was a big thanks, but nope. Which I think is fair.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's fair to say, oh, it's a good try, you know, or if you're from the South, that's the one where you kind of go, oh, bless your heart. You know, that's what you say. And it really just means you tried.
Yeah.
Good for you. I think that's so. I understand the stakeholder's intention ish by naming the vendor's intention. It's that the stakeholder is trying to say that this tool does what this tool does, and so
Don't touch it.
don't undo what that does. But at the same time, it's so broad and so generic that you can't do anything with it.
I have thoughts.
Go.
My thought at this point, what's the root cause of a stakeholder feeling like they have the empowerment to just send a requirement? This is it. To me, that reeks of the BA that they've dealt with not doing the analysis and being an order taker.
That's interesting. I would have said the opposite. I mean, I feel like stakeholders should be able, I feel like anybody should be able to create a requirement. Doesn't mean that it's going to go into an iteration or something like that, but it's just going to go into the backlog. I, as a BA, then would go in and refine it, review it, and say, oh, this is garbage, and, you know, give it the boot. But I could at least, or I ran it by the product owner, and then now the product owner says that's not part of the plan. So you can make that a level, 7 priority. But
I think we're missing quite a lot of context here.
Yeah.
agreed.
Is there a product owner? Who is that vendor? And do they have the relationship to, are they being empowered? One way you could look at it is, oh, the stakeholder is just sending it to me and empowering me to go figure it out. And I'm going to go work with the vendor and see what it is. Or it could be a complete slight on the other side. There's a lot of context missing here about this, but it's pretty vague, I would say.
Yeah. I think it's also one of those learning opportunities that you can provide as a BA to say,
Yeah.
oh, hey, thanks for trying. And here's the things that we normally look for in a user story or a requirement. But this is kind of helpful here. What did you mean by this and this and this? And the next time you do it, fill this out. And then that way you've empowered your stakeholder or whomever is going to be writing those requirements or helping out with that. And they can submit that. And then they feel good about it versus just you laughing and tearing it up in their face.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree. It is a learning opportunity, and have that conversation like, hey, I got your request. Can we talk about this? I have some questions.
Yeah.
And then start asking, maybe some of the context setting, get a little bit clear there, and then figure out where you need to drive down a little bit further and get deeper.
Yeah.
and see what's driving it. Like, what's even driving that? Because they probably just came out of some meeting and somebody said something to them and it's like, okay, well, what problem are we actually trying to solve here? Right? It always gets back to what are we trying to solve?
Use the functionality.
Yeah. Anytime I see a user story that has like the system, I kind of internally lose my mind.
Because it's not
And
the user.
like my eye starts twitching, right? And I'm like, that's not a user. That's not a user. That's not a person. Name the person. It's like, well, how do you do like an integration? It's like, well, at some point, somebody needs data to go from A to B, right? Well, then there's a story there.
Yeah. Which
And
system?
right.
Right.
And that
Right.
might be a job story or something intended to be technical. User story, the intent is understand the user.
Yeah.
But even if it is technical, the technical part of it is solving a user's concern, issue, whatever, right? There's user functionality that goes behind it. It says, yes, well, part of the technical item is for data to go from system A to system B. And
So
that's just part of the acceptance criteria. If you want to separate that out into a separate task or whatever, okay, great. But it's still part of that same user story in my mind.
I think that goes back to user stories aren't in isolation either. They're part of a map.
Yep.
And so if you understand where you're going from a user story map perspective and you tie that back to what is the value that we're trying to drive for our customers and for ourselves here too, I think then those user stories may be more valuable, but still who is the user? What is the system? What are we? I forget what that last part was, like the intent. What is the
vendor's
intent?
intention.
Right. Like there might be 5 intentions. I don't know, like which intention and what does that actually mean? And it could have just been, hey, we want to do configurations and not customization because we don't have budget. Maybe that's what they meant. It's really hard to say.
Yeah.
I can guarantee the vendor's intention is to make more money. And so then you're sitting there going, well, we're not going to stop them from making more money. That's a bad requirement.
We might increase their ability to make more money if we were to go forward as specified.
They'll be embedded for many years with you then.
It's true.
That's always fun and scary at the same time. The embedded vendor.
Yeah.
All right. So now it's time for our next segment.
Let's eavesdrop on the BA hotline and see what provocative project problems are awaiting us. Is your project in hot water? Operators are standing by. Ooh, that's hot.
These are cute. These are cute.
Thanks.
I always laugh.
I always laugh at. I can see the guests in the green room temporarily, and I always laugh to see like what their response to that is, and it's good. Yeah. And so I'm not sure you know this, Jen, but so that's my wife's voice, and she did all those little promos, and it's fun. Except for the BA Confessions one, that was mine. But her voice isn't that deep. But yeah, so it was fun.
I don't know what things are going through my mind about After Dark right now.
After Dark? Who knows what's going on?
Oh, well, some of those confessions there.
Well, we're actually going to open this up to anyone that is currently online in the audience to ask us questions around business analysis, around strategy, vision, any of the. I equated you earlier, Jen, to this like a Swiss Army knife because you kind of do a little bit of everything. And so, looking at, we have Leslie, we have Tiago. Do you have any questions for Jen, and what can she provide and answer for you? We're gonna put Jen on the spot. You're in the hot seat.
I'm in the hot seat. Okay.
In the hot seat. And while we're waiting on them, you had mentioned that you had some crazy jobs before. So you mentioned one in particular, and it's been in my mind the entire show. And I couldn't get it out. I'm just like, that is
Was it the
worst.
truly shitty job?
It was the truly shitty job, yes. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Sure.
And then also, has it changed your perspective on current shitty jobs that are, like, in air quotes, shitty?
Yeah. So my shitty job, the truly shitty one, was when I was in 8th grade. I was in middle school and I needed some money. And so I'd picked up a job cleaning the bathrooms at an RV park. So I got to go in, because if you've been to an RV park, there's some RVs have showers and some don't. And so there's like a public shower and toilets and sinks, and they're usually in these cinder blocked type of buildings type of thing, unless you're at like a super fancy one, but this one was not. And yeah, so I had a job that I had to go in and clean that out. So I was lucky, I will say, AJ. I didn't have to deal with. I've actually been in some public bathrooms that were probably worse than what I've had to clean. Yes,
Okay.
because you were like traveling and you stop in a gas station, and you're like, oh God, I hope I don't have to ever do that one. But yeah, you go in and gloves and bleach. And the nice thing about cinder block and concrete is you can just pour and spray things down. So it's much easier that way. And then you had to worry about, because this was down in Texas, so we had giant tarantulas, and we were along the river, so water moccasins would come up from the river. So
Black widows.
yeah, it was a joy.
Yeah, no, I'm out 100%. Like, first of all, I was already out by just the job. Like that was not the first thing. So I'm already out there. And then you mentioned like water moccasins and stuff. No, there's no way I'm going into what I'm at. So we have parks around here, and we've got a lot of great state parks around here. But every single time that I walk into one, I am waiting for like a little rattlesnake in the corner, just be staring up, and I'm like, no, And so like, I'll wait till I get home, and I'm not going in the state park. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. When I was a kid, so we spent a lot of time in different areas of Texas. And if you went to some of the parks there would actually be people who would just hang out in the park listening for the screams. And then they'd come running in with their jars to capture the tarantulas, because then they would take them and take the venom out and sell them. But they would just hang out, listen for the screams.
Wow.
That's worse. So like that job sucks, but also think about that from your perspective. You're in there, you're trying to use the restroom, you're ankles, and then you scream because you see the world's biggest spider around you, and then now someone comes bursting in with a jar trying to oh no, that's just
you learn to check before you drop your pants. Okay. You inspect and check to make sure it is safe, because otherwise you're running out and waiting till the people with the jars come in and get it.
Yeah.
So you learn to observe and analyze first.
Yes.
Before taking action.
Yes.
All of that is nightmare fuel, and no, I'm 100% out already. So, on a more wholesome note, Tiago asked a great question. What's your favorite family vacation, or what would you change about yourself if you could? I feel like those are two separate ones. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say, and this is going to sound egotistical, I like myself. I feel like if I change anything about myself, then like I'm already actively changing the things that I want to change, but like I wouldn't go back in time to change anything. I feel like if you go back in time, then you don't end up being who you are now. So I don't think I'd change anything.
Yeah.
I mean, besides the things that I'm already trying to change.
I would say I'm always trying to build new habits. But I agree with you, AJ. For me to be where I'm at today, that was a whole bunch of decision points, good and bad, along my life path that led me to where I am today. When it comes to things, I'm always looking to continuously improve. And so I think building some small micro habits are things that I've been working on. One is trying to get more exercise in, drink less coffee, some of those health things that you start to think about as you get a little bit older. Trying to add more time for just peace and quiet and meditation. So that's something that I've added in. And I feel like it helps. Like for me, probably a little ADHD, I would imagine, considering I have a couple of children who are, and back when I was growing up, that wasn't something that girls could get. And I don't even think they even diagnosed very many people anyways. But I feel like having that like, ooh, shiny object syndrome, doing a little bit of that meditation and just learning to just come, be present, get calm. I think that's something that I'm improving on. Right. And it's for me though. It's just really for me to feel like I want to have, as I say, I'm at my half life. I plan to, be here and double where I am today. So in order to do that, I do have to take care of my health, and I do need to keep my mind in check, kind of where we were, talking earlier today about, neuroplasticity and your brain and everything. Right. So, being able to do those things, I think, are important for me.
See, and I was half expecting the obvious answer. More sleep.
Well, I will say meditation helps calm me down when I don't get enough sleep too. So if I'm starting to get a headache, I can't focus, I'm feeling like, ugh, I'll just set a timer and do like 20 minutes and just do deep breathing. And it gives my body enough of a rest to kind of continue to go when I'm feeling very tired.
I've tried those night meditations where it's like, oh, we're going to do a calming meditation to help you sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And every single one that I've tried, you get somebody with a nice, calm voice and it's, good evening. Are you laying down? And then, so you're already there. I'm like, all right, that's nice. Like, in a calm position. And then it goes, don't think about all of the stresses at work. Don't think about all of the work that you've got. I'm like, well, now I'm thinking about all that shit, and
I don't do those ones. I don't do those.
It drives me crazy.
You need a better guide for guided meditation.
I've tried so many. And at this point, it's just, I read until I can't keep my eyes open any longer, and then that's it.
Yeah, I'll do that sometimes, but I would say sometimes I'll just listen to music and just focus on breathing and just really. So this was when I had a teacher tell me to do this, and it actually, I feel like it worked. You can do it laying down or sitting, but try to breathe through both nostrils of your nose at the same time evenly, because what you'll find is one side's kind of doing more than the other. But if you can practice doing both of them in and then out, and if I'm feeling like a little extra stress or anxiety or anything like that that's starting to come in, then, it's you breathe in usually like around 7, 8, hold it, and then you breathe back out. But if you try to do it, you can't think of other things when you're trying to get your nose to breathe through both nostrils at the same, And then it's actually very relaxing. Like if you just do that and try doing it for a minute, then try doing it for 2 minutes. Now, sometimes if I'm laying down doing it, I will just fall asleep. That's why I always have to set a timer if it's, during a daytime hours to wake me back up. But at nighttime, then usually if I do that, I can sleep for a few hours.
Very nice. So Steve, you've avoided the question.
Actually, I'm going to take the absurd route. One thing I would change about myself, if I could, I'd be taller.
Okay. Do you have a height in mind? Because it's a weird question. Like, or weird, it's like, well, tall. What does that mean? Does that mean like an inch, 2 inches? Does that mean like you're gonna be 7'3"? Like, what is it?
Between 5'11" and 6'2".
Okay. I have a buddy of mine that's he actually married us because he's 6'5", and so he made my wife's like 5'10", and so he made us both look like normal people in our pictures just because he's like towering above all of us. But I'm like, it'd be nice to be 6'5", and then I thought about flying, and I'm like, you know what? Nope, I already have issues enough flying. 6'3" is fine.
And I felt that short meeting you for the first time in Boston.
Well, you were also next to Leslie, so that doesn't. I mean, like you look normal size. So, Jen, and I'll share this and then we'll. It's actually. Asshole. That's right. So we'll wrap up, but when I met Steve for the first time, I was with I actually met Leslie, who was on the show as well in the comments, and then they said, "Oh, it's so nice meeting you." And then they followed me up to like my room where I was like checking in on my stuff. And I have my own habits when I like go into a hotel for the first time. I have a little like UV flashlight that I look for bed bugs and just weird gross stuff, because again, we've established that I'm a germaphobe. And so they're like, "What are you doing?" And I say, "Oh, I've got this thing. I've got to do this before I can put my stuff down, because otherwise I'll get a different room." And they're like, "Oh, okay."
No, I'm ripping the corners off all the beds, 100%. Checking and looking around. And if I see too much dust, or there's sometimes the bathtubs aren't clean enough, I'm like, I need a new room.
Yeah.
Or come clean it. If like there's been times where the hotels have been booked. I'm like, I need room service up here to clean the room. It's not clean.
Yeah. It's gross.
I am that person. So.
And that's fair.
And I carry the wipes and I spray, and then I carry my own. If I'm going to be, like, I went down to Virginia Beach for a month just because I needed some away time. And I brought candles and air fresheners and sanitation products and everything. So that way it's like, okay, just moved in.
I totally get that. So Jen, aside from WitCon in Pittsburgh and Columbus, where can people find you? What do you have going on?
So let's see. I'll be in California next week, and then I'll be home for a couple days, and then I'll be in Detroit.
Okay.
And you can find me online. So, you can find me on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with me there. To my knowledge, I'm the only Jen Bleen on LinkedIn, Jennifer Bleen, or in Facebook even, or anything else. So, but I would say LinkedIn's probably the easiest way. I'm on Twitter, but I don't really use it that much.
That's fair.
And then the other thing that I do is I have a passion project that we just started, which I don't even think I shared this with you, AJ. But part of my give back, now that my kids are getting older and I have a little bit more bandwidth, is being that I was a single mom and I grew up in poverty when I, was a kid, that I'm now working on a financial empowerment program for single moms. And so that's Verve Curve. We just launched Instagram and YouTube. We still got a website that we're working on, and then we'll bring in some of the other social media, starting to interview other single moms who have kind of come out of and overcome challenges to now be financially successful, and talk about like what their journey was like. And then we'll be probably early next year launching some of the actual financial education products and classes and things like that. So that's like my passion project outside of teaching people about I have my trademark, so the Evolve Roadmap. So I think we talked a little bit about that. So you can always find that online, as well as I'm a partner with Start With Profit. And I'm a licensed provider for software profit streams. So talking about sustainability and profitability and helping organizations with that. So I'm kind of lots of different places.
You're everywhere. And I will say, like, when you look up your name on LinkedIn, it looks like someone just dropped a whole bunch of Scrabble letters behind your name. And then it's like, oh, I just lost my letters, and that's it. Because it goes on forever. So, so LinkedIn, you've got your own. I'll have all of the show links, or your links on the show, to both YouTube and LinkedIn. And that's our show, everybody. So thank you so much for attending and watching. If you want to be a part of the show, feel free to engage with us on analystsafterdark.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn, and you can subscribe to our channel on YouTube. So that'll give you all of the cool blogs. You get to be, you can communicate with your own confessions or your own questions. So either way.
Well,
Yeah.
I hope some of the ladies from Connect Her joined. I did send a note out on the Connect Her network too, so hopefully some people showed up for that.
Well, if not, they can find us on LinkedIn or on YouTube, and you can send them the link afterwards. That's our show, everybody. So thank you very much. Remember to stay curious
and stay positive.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody.
Great seeing you guys. Thanks.